After clocking out of the midnight cleaning shift at Coles, they began the lonely 30-minute drive home. The road ahead was desolate, flanked by endless trees. No houses, no lights, just the void of night. They spotted something ahead, barely visible in the weak glow of the headlights. At first, it seemed like an animal, but as the car drew closer, the shape grew distinct, a person, standing still in the middle of the road. Confusion turned to dread as the dark highway seemed to close in. As the car crept closer, the figure in the road came into full view. It was a person, but not just any person. They were dressed in a clown costume, the kind you might see at a carnival or children's party, except here, it was far from whimsical. The outfit was a patchwork of vibrant colors, red, blue, and yellow, standing out in sharp contrast against the black void of the highway. Their face was painted with exaggerated features, a wide, garish red smile that stretched too far, jagged black triangles extending from their eyes. The smudges and cracks in the paint gave their expression a sinister, almost decayed appearance, like something that had been left too long in the sun. A tangled mop of bright red hair sat askew on their head, completing the unsettling image. The clown stood perfectly still, one hand raised in a slow, deliberate wave. There was no urgency, no sign of distress, just a calm, almost mocking motion, as if they were inviting the driver to come closer. The headlights cast long shadows behind them, distorting their form into something monstrous. The driver's confusion deepened. Why would someone be out here, miles from civilization, dressed like that? There were no cars pulled off to the side, no signs of a stranded motorist. The highway was utterly deserted, save for them and this thing. For a moment, they thought it might be a prank, a group of teenagers playing a cruel joke. But the thought dissolved as the clown's unblinking gaze locked onto them. It wasn't the playful demeanor of someone having fun. There was something menacing in that painted smile, something that sent a cold shiver down their spine. Instinctively, they reached for the door locks, the quiet click breaking the silence inside the car. Their hands trembled on the steering wheel as they stared at the figure. A part of them wanted to roll down the window to ask if the person needed help, but the words wouldn't come. Every fiber of their being screamed that something was wrong, that this was no ordinary encounter. Seconds stretched into an eternity. The clown remained motionless, its arm frozen mid-wave, as if waiting for the driver to make the first move. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the car's engine, and then, as if the stillness was too much to bear, the clown tilted its head slowly to the side. The motion was unnatural, almost mechanical, like a doll being turned by unseen hands. The wave stopped, and their hand dropped to their side. That's when they saw it. The clown's other hand, hidden behind its back, emerged. Clutched tightly in its fingers was a long, gleaming knife. The blade caught the light from the headlights, sending a sharp reflection into the driver's eyes. Time seemed to freeze. The clown's grin widened, impossibly so, as if relishing the driver's growing fear. Their legs felt like lead, their mind racing but body frozen. They weren't just staring at a clown anymore, they were staring at danger incarnate. The clown took a step forward. Slowly. Deliberately. Each movement was precise, calculated, like a predator stalking its prey. The driver's breath quickened, their chest tightening with every step the clown took, and then, in that suffocating moment of terror, the driver realized they were still sitting there. The car was their sanctuary, their escape, yet they were frozen in place, unable to act. Their brain screamed at them to move, to hit the gas and get out of there, but they couldn't. Not yet. Not until they were sure this wasn't just a nightmare. The car sat motionless in the center of the highway, a narrow beam of light cutting through the dark night. The only sounds were the quiet hum of the engine and the racing heartbeat of the driver, pounding so loud in their ears it threatened to drown out everything else. The clown, standing perfectly still in front of the car, had not moved. The unsettling silence hung heavily in the air, like a thick fog, suffocating and unnatural. The driver couldn't look away. Every inch of their body screamed to flee, but they couldn't tear their eyes from the figure in front of them. They had to be dreaming, right? This couldn't be real. A clown in the middle of nowhere, at this hour. Alone, miles from civilization. It didn't make sense. But it was happening. The disheveled costume. The grotesque grin. The way the clown just stood there, unblinking, unfeeling, as though it was waiting for something. And then, just as the stillness became unbearable, the clown's head tilted. Slowly, so slowly, that it could almost be mistaken for a malfunctioning puppet. The movement was deliberate, unnatural, like a creature not entirely bound by human anatomy. Its neck creaked, the sound barely audible above the car's hum. The head was tilted almost at an impossible angle now, like the clown was studying the driver. The way it looked at them made the hair on their necks stand on end. It was no longer just a person in a costume, it felt like a predator sizing up its prey. The driver's breath quickened. A cold sweat began to form on their brow as they instinctively locked the doors. It wasn't the car that would protect them, but it was the only barrier between them and the nightmare standing outside. Still, they couldn't bring themselves to move, couldn't bring themselves to drive away. The clown's gaze, so intense, so penetrating, kept them frozen in place. Every part of their body screamed to move, to act, but they couldn't. It was as if the clown's eyes held them captive, trapping them in the moment. The seconds felt like hours as the clown's hand slowly, almost lazily, dropped from its raised position. The driver watched in horrified fascination as the clown's fingers unfurled, revealing the hidden weapon. At first, it wasn't clear what it was, just a glint of metal. But as the clown fully extended its arm, the gleaming blade of a large knife came into view. It was long, shining coldly in the car's headlights, and as the clown gripped it, it almost seemed to smile wider. The weapon wasn't just a knife, it was a message. The driver's stomach dropped as the realization hit them, this was no joke. This was not a prank. The clown wasn't here for fun. It was here for something far more sinister. The clown raised the knife, and the movement was so slow, so deliberate, that it felt like time was stretching in front of them. Every inch of the blade gleamed with the reflection of the headlights, casting eerie, flickering shadows across the asphalt. The clown's painted grin stretched even wider, like the smile of a predator about to pounce. The driver's blood ran cold as they watched, unable to move, unable to scream. All they could do was watch as the clown held the weapon aloft, waiting, as if for approval, or perhaps an invitation to make its move. In that moment, everything inside the car went silent. The driver's breath, shallow and quick, filled the small space, the sound of their pulse in their ears drowning out everything else. The headlights illuminated the clown's face in stark detail, the eyes that were too wide, too empty. The twisted, painted smile. The clown's eyes, dark and hollow, locked onto theirs with unnerving focus, and the knife, so sharp, so dangerously close, was poised to strike. The driver's heart pounded wildly in their chest, each beat shaking them to their core. And then, with terrifying slowness, the clown took a step forward. The movement wasn't fast, but it was sure, methodical, like a dancer performing a calculated step. With every inch closer the clown came, the driver felt a wave of panic surge through them. Their hands gripped the steering wheel with a white-knuckled ferocity, and their feet twitched above the pedals. There was no place to go, no one around for miles. The car's engine hummed softly, but there was no escape, at least, not yet. The clown's feet shuffled forward, dragging against the asphalt with a soft scrape. The distance between them shrank, and every step it took was like the pounding of a drum in the driver's ears, growing louder and louder. Each footfall felt like it was sealing their fate. The knife was still raised, now pointing directly at them, as if it were an extension of the clown's will. The blade glinted in the dim light, mocking them, reminding them of the danger just outside their door. The driver's pulse surged in their throat, and they realized that if they didn't act soon, if they didn't escape, they might never leave this highway. A sickening wave of dread washed over them, and their brains seemed to short-circuit. It was like they were paralyzed, stuck in a nightmare where no matter what they did, nothing could save them. But then, something inside them snapped. It wasn't fear that fueled them, it was survival. It was instinct. It was the primal urge to escape. And just as the clown stepped even closer, its face twisting with anticipation, the driver's hands moved without thinking. Their foot slammed down on the gas pedal, the car lurched forward with a screech of tires, and they sped off. The car shot forward, the wheels spinning, kicking up dust behind them. The clown's face twisted in surprise as they tore past, narrowly missing the figure as it swayed dangerously close to the car's side. The knife flashed in the corner of their eye, and for a brief second, they thought they might actually hit the clown. But they didn't. They flew past, heart racing, breath shallow, their foot still pressed firmly on the gas. The road ahead was nothing but blackness, stretching on for what felt like miles. They couldn't bring themselves to look back, not yet. The only thing that mattered now was getting as far away as possible, as fast as possible. The car sped down the highway, the sound of the tires screeching against the pavement echoing in their ears, but it was all drowned out by the deafening sound of their own panicked breathing. Tears stung their eyes, their vision blurring with each passing second. But they didn't dare stop. Didn't dare look back. The highway seemed endless, the darkness pressing in from all sides, but there was no turning back now. All they could do was drive. Drive and hope that the nightmare, that the clown, would stay behind. But deep down, they knew it wasn't over. Not yet. The clown, the knife, and the terror were still fresh in their mind, and no matter how far they drove, the memory of the encounter would haunt them for a long time to come. The car sped down the empty highway, its headlights slicing through the oppressive darkness. The driver's hands were shaking on the wheel, their knuckles white as they gripped it tightly. The engine roared louder than it ever had before, the sound reverberating in their ears, but it wasn't loud enough to drown out their frantic thoughts. They risked a glance in the rearview mirror, their heart pounding as they searched the road behind them. The clown was gone, or at least, it wasn't visible anymore. The spot where they had seen it standing was now just a void swallowed by the night. But that didn't ease their terror. The clown, with its grotesque grin and shining knife, was burned into their memory, an image that refused to fade. They tried to focus on the road ahead, but their mind kept replaying the encounter. That painted face, the slow, deliberate movements, the glint of the knife, it all felt like a bad dream, except they were wide awake. Every bump in the road made them flinch, every shadow cast by their headlights felt like it was coming alive. The fear wasn't leaving them, it was growing, crawling under their skin and taking hold. The driver's breathing was ragged now, each inhale feeling sharp and shallow. Their eyes darted from the road to the rearview mirror and back again, unable to shake the feeling that something, no, someone, was following them. Was the clown running after the car? Was it hidden just beyond the reach of the headlights? The thought made their stomach churn. The highway stretched on endlessly, the road a dark ribbon that seemed to wind deeper into nowhere. The trees on either side loomed like silent sentinels, their branches reaching out as if trying to snatch the car from its path. The isolation of the place, which had once been a comfort on late-night drives, now felt suffocating. In the distance, a faint glow appeared, another car, perhaps. No. It was a small roadside sign, its reflective surface catching the headlights. The driver barely had time to read it, but the words "Rest Stop 2 miles" burned into their mind. For a brief moment, relief washed over them. A rest stop meant lights, maybe other people, maybe safety, but then the doubt crept in. What if the clown followed them there? What if it wasn't safe? What if stopping was the worst thing they could do? The driver wrestled with their instincts, their foot wavering on the gas pedal. Every part of them wanted to keep going, to drive until they hit civilization, or until they ran out of gas. But exhaustion was creeping in. Their hands were slippery with sweat, their eyes stung from tears and the strain of staring into the darkness. They needed a moment to collect themselves, to think clearly. The rest stop came into view, a lonely little area lit by a single, flickering street light. There was no sign of other cars, no sign of life. Just an empty parking lot, a few picnic tables, and a small building that housed restrooms. The driver slowed the car, their heart hammering as they debated stopping. The lot was deserted, eerily still, but it felt better than the endless highway behind them. As they pulled into the lot, the car's headlights swept across the rest area, illuminating the empty spaces. The shadows cast by the flickering light seemed to stretch unnaturally, creating shapes that made the driver's breath itch. They parked the car but didn't turn off the engine. Instead, they sat there, their hands still gripping the wheel, their eyes scanning every inch of the rest area. The silence was deafening, and then they saw it. A flicker of movement in the darkness, just at the edge of the trees. It was faint, barely noticeable, but it was enough to send a chill down their spine. Their eyes locked onto the spot, their breath caught in their throat. Was it the clown? Was it coming for them? The driver's pulse spiked again. Their survival instinct screamed louder than ever. They couldn't stay here. They couldn't let their guard down. Slamming the car into reverse, they backed out of the lot and peeled back onto the highway, tires screeching against the pavement. The rest stop disappeared into the night behind them, swallowed by the darkness once again. But the fear remained, clinging to them like a second skin. They drove faster now, desperate to reach the safety of home, praying that whatever had been out there wouldn't follow. The clown might have disappeared from view, but it hadn't left. It was still with them, in their mind, in their fear, in the quiet shadows of the night.